Lucky you.
Are we ready? Okay. Counselor, are you ready?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
I'm a little picky for the proclamation. I don't know.
Good job.
Yeah.
I will now call to order the regular City Council meeting of June 13th. Members of the public are invited to attend in-person meetings in City Council chambers. Public access to the meeting is also available by telephone by using the call-in numbers posted on the meeting agenda. Meetings are broadcast on Channel 8 for Comcast and Xfinity subscribers and on the city's YouTube channel online. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Leidy is absent tonight. Mayor Pro Tem Wilford.
Here.
Councilmember Whitkovich.
Here.
Councilmember Jaramillo.
Here.
Councilmember Kondo.
Here.
Councilmember Luke Manhero-Massa. Here. Councilmember Goff.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Walker.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Heather, are there any responses to citizen inquiry?
Nothing this evening. Thank
All
you.
right. Council, any additions or deletions to the agenda? No? Okay. All right, if council will join me in front of the dais, we have 2 proclamations this evening. Yeah, bring this on, man. Okay, Deja Moore, do you want to come on up? All right. Welcome, Deja. Deja is going to accept both proclamations honoring Pride Month and Juneteenth on behalf of the Diversity, Inclusivity, and Social Equity Board. So we will start with Pride Month. All right. Whereas Pride Month celebrations include people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex, asexual, two-spirit, pansexual, gender fluid, gender nonconforming, and non-binary, as well as heterosexual and cisgender allies. And whereas there has been remarkable progress towards acceptance and equality in recent years, members of the LGBTQ+ community still face unacceptable hate and discrimination simply for being who they are and for who they love. And there remains much work to do to extend the promise of our country to every person. And whereas we must acknowledge that many continue to face social intolerance and systemic barriers, including restricted rights, challenges accessing health care and other basic social services, and startling rates of violence. And whereas, in the movement, it is imperative to remember its history and center the voices of its most marginalized members, especially the transgender women of color like Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, participants in the Stonewall Uprising in New York City in 1969. A key moment in the LGBTQ+ civil rights movement, which inspired millions around the world to seek justice, fairness, and equal rights. And whereas it's vital not to be silent nor avert our eyes from the threats that our LGBTQ+ and transgender, gender nonconforming, and non-binary family, friends, co-workers, neighbors, and community are facing, and to find ways to protect each other and continue to be a safe harbor and home for all people. And whereas the City of Northglenn recognizes the resilience, determination, and accomplishments of LGBTQ+ individuals and proudly reaffirms its commitment to protecting and respecting the rights of every resident, employee, business owner, worker, student, and visitor who are part of the LGBTQ+ community by participating in community pride events, joining or providing pride yard signs, and flying the pride flag at City Hall during the month of June. Now, therefore, I, Jenny Wilford, Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Northglenn, Colorado, do hereby proclaim June 2022 as Pride Month in the City of Northglenn and encourage all residents to celebrate our proud and diverse community and reflect on the ways we can all live and work together with a commitment to supporting visibility, dignity, and equity for all people. Dated at Northglenn, Colorado, this 13th day of June 2022. Yay! So this, my friend, for you. Would you like to make any comments now on Pride?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I just want to thank everyone for being here and for the City Council, for you all, for honoring us this month and continuing to do it so. Last year, Thornton didn't want to raise the Pride flag, and so it's great to be a resident of Northglenn, from Northglenn, and continue to advance these efforts. So thank you so much.
All right, don't go far. We've got one more.
Mayor Pro Tem, do you want to do a photo now or do one?
What do you prefer?
It's up to you guys.
Do one and use it twice.
Oh, they have a sign. We must do. Oh, let's do it now.
Wardrobe change.
Thank you.
Get in here, girl. It's not complete without me.
You teach that down.
Where do you want
There we go.
Perfect. Thank you.
I have enough people here who catch me in the fall.
Well, we got you. All right, our next proclamation honors Juneteenth. Whereas the United States of America was conceived on 4th of July, 1776, with the Declaration of Independence, which proclaimed, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And whereas our nation entered a period of darkness wherein systemic racism, inequality, and inhumanity were born in the form of slavery, and whereas President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, providing that all persons held as slaves shall be then henceforward and forever free. And whereas on June 19th, 1865, Union soldiers led by Major General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas to announce the end of the Civil War and to finally enforce the Emancipation Proclamation. And whereas nearly 9 decades after our nation's founding and more than 2 years after President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, all enslaved people were finally released from servitude and recognized for the first time as free citizens. And whereas from the year 1865 forward, Black Americans across our nation came to celebrate Juneteenth as Freedom Day and as Emancipation Day. And whereas in 2021, President Joe Biden established June 19th as Juneteenth National Independence Day, a U.S. federal holiday commemorating the end of slavery in the United States. And whereas all Americans can carry Juneteenth forward as a tradition to not only celebrate the end of slavery in America, but also to recommit ourselves as a daily endeavor to our nation's founding ideals of freedom, equality, and justice for all Americans. Now, therefore, I, Jenny Wilford, Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Northglenn, Colorado, hereby proclaim June 19th, 2022 as Juneteenth in the City of Northglenn and encourage all residents to honor and celebrate our nation's ability to overcome the painful past of slavery, to heal, and to continue the pursuit of our founding ideals for all Americans. Dated at Northglenn, Colorado, this 13th day, just kidding, of June 2022. All right, Deja, this is for you. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, and I think this is just essential, right? I mean, just the fabric of America was built on the backbone of Black Americans, really essentially. And I think it's our commitment, right, as all of us together, regardless of your race, to continue our efforts in diversity, equity, and inclusion. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Deja. All right, are we taking one more picture,
Would you like
Heather?
to?
Yeah, let's take the picture.
One, two, three, cheese, 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 and one more cheese. Perfect. Thank you.
Don't forget this other
Okay.
All right, we're going to move into presentations now. We have Robert Kreeser, Assurance Senior Manager with RSM, will present the audit report to council. Welcome.
Thank you. Do I have to turn?
He just needs to get the.
It's coming.
It's on. Heather.
Perfect.
It's on. It's on.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Robert Kreiser, Senior Manager, RSM. Was the manager on the City of Northglenn audit. Appreciate you guys taking the time, listen to me just go through the kind of some financial highlights and then my required communication to those charged with governance. But before I jump into the financial highlights, I do just want to thank Jason and Joanne and their team for their hard work this year throughout the audit. We gave them a pretty much whole new audit team that was here on site. So just appreciate their hard work helping us work through the audit this year and get it done timely. Some of the financial statement highlights. First, governmental fund revenues. As you can see, revenues in the current year were down about 7.5 million compared to 2020, which is about a decrease in 15%. A majority of that reason was due to intergovernmental revenues, with down about 5.6 million or 50%, and a lot of that was related to last year's CARES funding that the city did receive. You will note, not in the revenue section, but if you are looking at the financial statements, in the liabilities section this year there is an unearned revenue of about $4.7 million, and this is ARPA funding. So these dollars have been received, but they cannot be recognized as revenue yet until you have eligible expenditures that you use them on. So throughout the next couple periods, as those dollars are used, then you will see those dollars go to revenue. Also, contributions decreased about $7 million, and then offsetting that, there was about a $6.1 million increase in taxes, which the majority of that was related to sales tax increase, which was about 28% increase and about $6 million. Governmental fund expenditures also decreased about 15.6%, or about $10 million, and really the main reason for this was capital outlay decreased about 11.4 million. And really the reason for that is just based on the number of projects and the size of those projects year over year. So there was just more projects in 2020 compared to 2021. Net position did increase about $3.8 million, or 2.7%. Biggest change was in the restricted portion, increased about $7.4 million, or 34%. The big change in that restricted was about $7 million increase in restricted capital improvements. General fund balance, you'll note here that majority of the general fund balance is unassigned. It's about 72.5%, which also accounts for about 272 days in unassigned fund balance, essentially meaning that what you have in unassigned can cover general fund expenditures for about 272 days. Enterprise funds, biggest change there, operating revenue did increase about 2.7 million or 17.5%. The main increases there were $2 million in water and about 800,000 in wastewater in charges for services, really just usage and rate increases. And then expenditures did go up about 7.3% or $1 million. Really, those factors just causing an increase in operating income of about 1.8 million or 34%. Those are my financial statement highlights. I'll just pause really quick before I get into my required communication in case anyone has any questions on those financial statement highlights. Yes?
You knew it, right? My question just has to do with, do you have a standard of what a reserve should be?
There really isn't a standard on what a reserve should be. It kind of does differ. I mean, that I would say related to a lot of similar clients that I have, cities maybe of your similar size, your days is probably a little higher than a lot that I have. But it's really a city to city. It differs all across the board. And I mean, there are certain clients that I have that do try to use benchmarks and stay at a certain amount, and they kind of utilize that when they're working through budgets and different things. But I also have others that just kind of look at it at year end and determine if they think there's any issues. So there's really not a benchmark out there. I know it's not a great answer,
That's
but
not a great answer at all.
but it's really the truth in practice.
I
So.
really wanted you to throw out a hard number to me.
I'm
But
sorry.
I appreciate your response. Thank you.
Councilmember Condo?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I wonder if we can go back to slide 5,
Yeah.
or slide 6, rather. And so I appreciate that pie graph, if you will, but I'm just trying to get a handle. Is there a dollar value breakdown when you talk about those different percentages? Again, I'm talking about slide 6, hopefully.
Oh,
That one.
yeah. I apologize. I do not have the financial statements in front of me. I don't know if Jason or Joanne, if either of you do. I'm guessing the answer is no.
Okay, so that total represents $28 million. Okay. So
Yeah.
roughly about 2/3 then is that blue category unassigned?
Correct.
Or, I'm sorry, 3/4?
Yeah, it's about 20 million.
Okay, very good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
good question. Anyone else? All right. Just jumping into my required communications. As auditors, we audit under a couple different sets of standards. First being generally accepted auditing standards, where we look to ensure that the financial statements were presented in accordance with GAAP or generally accepted accounting principles. And you'll note if you look in the opinion this year, we issued an unmodified or clean opinion in relation to the financial statements. We also audit under GAS or government auditing standards, where we do additional work around internal controls. And in the current year, we did not identify any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, no issues with internal controls or financial statements. There were no significant changes in the current year in relation to adoptions of new pronouncements, no changes in accounting policies. Accounting estimates that the city has are fair value of estimates or investments, depreciable lives of capital assets, and allowance for doubtful accounts. While we're auditing, we do additional work around these estimates to ensure that management's estimates are appropriate. And throughout the process, we noted that each estimate was appropriate at year end. There were no audit adjustments. In our letter to those charged with governance, there is one uncorrected misstatement, but it was specifically related to Church Ditch, which is a part of the report as a discretely presented component unit. And this was just related to an accounts payable error where accounts payable and expense was overstated. It was put back into 2021 when the majority of the invoice was not related. And that was a $22,000 error. And since we test on a sampling basis, you also see a projected error to the amount of the population that we did not test, which was a $12,000 projection. There were no disagreements with management, no difficulties encountered in performing the audit. You'll note, then looking at the financial statements, that the city did receive from 2020, their Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting, and the ACFR will be submitted again to the GFOA this year to receive for 2021. We did perform a single audit again in the current year because the city did have over $750,000 in federal expenditures, and we audit the single audit under uniform grant guidance. And there was one major program tested in the current year, and it was the Highway Planning and Construction Cluster, which is assistance listing number 20.205. And we also issued an unmodified or clean opinion in relation to the major program. And there were
I
no,
like how you call
no
it
complaints.
cluster. How we feel about it.
And yeah, no compliance findings. That is all I have. Be happy to try and answer any questions that anyone has.
Councilmember Kondo?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So I come from private industry, publicly traded company, and the way we look at the health of businesses are like the Moody's or Standard & Poor's rating. Are there equivalents of that sort of rating that apply to government, municipalities, things of that nature? And
Yeah.
if so, what was our rating?
Apologize that I don't have this written down, but I believe the bonds are rated AA by Standard & Poor. Jason is confirming that, so that is correct.
So generally, you would say that's pretty good indication of health, of our financial health, would you
Yes.
not?
I would agree.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Councilmember Brown?
I just want to throw a big thank you to you guys. What is that, Jason, like 10 years with no errors, or is it 20? It's like forever.
I'm not gonna jinx anything, so.
Well, I just think that I appreciate everything that you do for us to make sure that everything's legit.
Thank you.
Thank you, I don't have one for you, but you did a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone's time. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do I have?
All right, next up on our agenda, we have 2022 legislative session recap with Bowditch and Castle. City lobbyists Jennifer Castle and Ed Bowditch will present the legislative recap. Welcome.
Good evening.
Hi.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Ooh, good, there we go. Thank you. So my name is Jennifer Castle. This is Ed Bowditch, and we're your lobbying team down at the Capitol. It is an honor and a privilege to represent the city, so thank you very much. We appreciate that. It is also wonderful working with the legislative committee members as well, too. So we had a good time this session discussing plenty of bills, as you guys know. So we're going to give you a highlight of the legislative session, talk a little bit about the budget, and then go into some major policy bills that we saw at the Capitol, as well as some individual bills that the city engaged on and took positions on. So to do an overview, just so everyone knows, we have what's known as the trifecta down at the Capitol, meaning that Democrats are in control of both the House and the Senate, as well as the governor's office. We continue to see more and more diversity in the legislature as every year passes. Of course, this year was the same. We have a total of 716 bills that were introduced this year. Of those 716, only 143 were killed, meaning they were postponed indefinitely. So quite a few pieces of legislation passed this session. Some of the common themes that we saw, the 2022 election was kind of a big umbrella over the whole session. Legislators were concerned about their races. They were getting to know their new constituents and their new districts from redistricting. So there was a lot of anticipation, or maybe even some anxiety as well, too, for the 2022 election. The legislature also had a big task this year in distributing all of the federal stimulus dollars. The state of Colorado got close to $2 billion in federal stimulus, so that was one of their top priorities this year. National issues, of course, trickled down to the state as well, so we did see a lot of issues kind of percolate up as it related to, some of the social issues that usually there's a lot of, butting heads, if you will. And then lastly, some conflict between the governor's office and the legislature. So what us in the lobby refer to as first floor versus the second floor. So a little bit of infighting with the governor and the legislature. However, given a few things that happened before the legislative session, during the legislative session, the Democrats kind of toned things down a little bit and chose to pull back some of their bills that they were introducing. The theme of both the governor and the majority party in the legislature was saving people money. And they introduced a variety of bills along this theme. And you can see here is just a few of those with saving people money on using the roads when they go to file businesses for our restaurants and things to be able to still keep sales tax revenues. So a lot of different ways in which the legislature aimed to help people save money. And again, the federal stimulus dollars, just so you know, there were some priority areas that the legislature focused on in spending. Sorry, let me get my clicker going here. Sorry, Ed. Affordable housing, behavioral health services, child care, homelessness services, workforce development, and air quality programs were all very big. And they, the legislature really wants to incentivize these types of behaviors via grants.
Thank you, Jennifer. Some of the major policy bills that the legislature took up this year, one that got a lot of notoriety, the Reproductive Health Equity Act. A couple of the others had a more direct interest and impact on Northglenn. House Bill 1295, creating the Department of Early Childhood. That's the new state agency that will coordinate the free preschool that people are going to be eligible for. House Bill 1326, the Fentanyl Accountability and Prevention. This was about one of the most discussed bills this session. Hours and hours of very tough testimony by people coming down. In the end, it was a bill that a lot of people weren't satisfied with, even the people who did not want to see more criminalization of fentanyl possession and the people who wanted more treatment. But the bill did pass on the last night of the session. And then collective bargaining for counties. This has been talked about for 2 years. In the end, when the bill was introduced with about 2 weeks to go, it only applied to counties. And even then, they exempted all the small counties. But this is something we wanted to at least bring to the group tonight, because a lot of people predict that this is the first step. In the next few years, you could see an expansion to bring this to cities, departments of institutions of higher ed as well, those entities that were not under the bill.
Mm-hmm. There we go. So we tracked over 60 bills. We took positions on 18 of those bills, and there were more that we certainly could have engaged on and or tracked, but we certainly had to pick some priorities for the legislative session this year. We supported 15 bills. All of those but 2 passed. We opposed 3. 2 of them were killed, but 1 did pass. We did remain in constant communication with a lot of our partners down at the Capitol, other municipalities, but in particular CML as well too, and participated in their municipal caucus lunches and followed a lot of their positions as well too. So just to pick out a few of the bills that we took positions on, 2 that follow along the environment, House Bill 1026. This was a bill that came from an interim committee to study tax expenditures. This was originally a tax deduction. This bill changed this program into a tax credit, which essentially gives employers a tax credit to provide alternative transportation options to their employees. We took a support position on this bill. I will note that this bill was introduced on the first day of the legislative session, and it passed on the very last day of the legislative session. So this one had a long journey.
And it has been signed by the governor.
It has been signed.
When we wrote this, it hadn't been, but
Yep.
all the bills have been signed at this point.
Yep. One other one to point out was a turf replacement program that the Colorado Water Conservation Board is going to create to essentially incentivize both homeowners and local governments and school districts to essentially replace turf that uses a lot of water and to use more water-wise type of well, I guess turf or any other kind of replacement. So there's going to be $2 million going towards this program that, again, the city would be able to apply for grants for that program, as well as residents of Northglenn as well, too.
housing is one of the big issues, if not the biggest issue down at the Capitol. Everybody wants to try and find a solution to affordable housing in Colorado. The legislature adopted a number of bills. We supported House Bill 1051 that continues the tax credit program that is run by the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority. This program was scheduled to repeal in 2024, but it was extended for a few more years. Also, we supported House Bill 1083 that expands a current tax credit that can go to donors to nonprofits that serve individuals who are homeless. The bill current statute has that limited only to enterprise zones, and this bill takes it statewide. And that bill has been signed by the governor. Then 2 grant programs, House Bill 1304, which provides grants for local affordable housing. The governor has signed this. And then 159, a revolving loan fund, intending to allow local entities to loan out monies, be repaid, and use this over time to help affordable housing strategies.
And I will say there were millions of dollars that were allocated to these 2 programs.
Yeah.
So the legislature really feels that these 2 bills are going to have an impact on affordable housing. To mention a few bills as it relates to general government, one bill that we did oppose and that was killed at the Capitol was House Bill 1152, which would prohibit any employer from taking an adverse action against an employee for taking medical marijuana while on the job or while using recreational marijuana off the job. This posed some liability concerns, especially for municipalities, some workers' compensation type of liability issues and such. That one was killed. And then another one that we wanted to mention, it's Senate Bill 1. And I will say, because it's Senate Bill 1, that signals to you that that is a priority for the legislature. That is the most important bill for the Senate. This is a grant program for crime prevention through safer streets. So this is going to dedicate, I believe, about $10.3 million in grants for local governments to apply for, to create safer streets, safer designs of certain neighborhoods and areas to reduce crime. And then lastly, I will say that we did, as a city, we did have a robust conversation on House Bill 1326, which was the fentanyl bill. We did engage with our law enforcement and had a great conversation on that and did end up supporting the bill and consider that a win for the city. You want the clicker?
Not going to go over all the slides on the budget here, but the state general fund revenues continue to come in at quite the brisk pace. As you know, Colorado is the only state that has a revenue limit. It has a tax limit, but it also has a revenue limit. So any money collected over the revenue limit has to be refunded to the taxpayers. You can see on some of these slides the roller coaster nature of Colorado's general fund revenue there, which has led to the strong Tabor refunds. This year, the state will be refunding about $2 billion, much larger than any other refund they've had in the past. And there was a change in the refund policy. Typically, there is a income tax reduction, a sales tax credit, and a senior homestead exemption, which is how they refund the money. This year, they decided to send checks out to every taxpayer. So in late September, everyone will receive a check of $400 to $500, as we note on there, cha-ching.
Good. Thank you, Ed. Just to hit a little bit on the election, since this is going to be an important election, all of the statewide races are up. So the treasurer, secretary of state, the governor, the attorney general, some of these races are going to be more closely followed than others, but it is important to note that every statewide race is up, as well as U.S. Senator Michael Bennet. There's going to be one referred measure from the legislature, which was via House Bill 1414, that you as voters will vote on to provide free lunch for all K-12 public school children, regardless of their economic need. And then some referred measures by the voters. We usually have a hefty ballot here in Colorado, and of course, 2022 will reflect that as well. Only one so far has been approved and finalized for the ballot. That is an income tax reduction. We do suspect that there's going to be others that will make it through the process. Some of those include sales tax reduction, legalizing psychedelic mushrooms, and allowing any future Tabor refunds to go towards school funding. There we go. Something also of note, there's been a lot of rumors going around lately that the Colorado legislature, the balance of the Colorado legislature might be a toss-up. It does seem that the House has a lot more of a majority for the Democrats than the Senate does. Right now, a lot of folks are predicting that the Senate could very well flip from Democratic to Republican control. So then we might have divided government going into the 2023 legislative session. And then I do want to mention just briefly, as I said before, we do have new districts in both the House and the Senate. We did gain a new congressional district, CD8, that encompasses Adams County and Weld County. So I wanted to point that out as well. And then looking ahead, a few things that Ed and I have thought about and continue to think about. There seems to be a rise of advocacy organizations down at the Capitol. They seem to have a little bit more influence rather than some other public entities. So we're curious if that is still going to remain the case as we move forward. We do believe that we are going to see a decreasing Democratic majority, whether or not that leads to one of the chambers flipping, but we do know that we are going to see fewer Democrats in the legislature. Will tensions continue with the executive branch? The governor, as I mentioned, is up for election in 2022. He'll essentially be in his last term, so he could very well run more legislation that he wants rather than what the legislature would like as well. So we'll see. Or I shouldn't say run legislation, but either support or veto legislation, excuse me. And then the role of the ballot process. As I mentioned, we continue to see large ballots in our election years. We saw some legislation introduced this year to fend off ballot measures in 2022. So that seems to be a common theme that we're seeing as well. Will there be any changes to the ballot process as we move forward? Or have certain organizations and groups figured out that if they really want to get something passed, maybe they go to the voters instead of depending on the legislature to pass something? Oh, I think I clicked a few too many, but we were open for any questions or comments. Excuse me.
And thank you for the privilege of representing the city.
Yes, thank you.
All right, we've got a question from Councilmember Kondo.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I wonder if we can go back, I think you had SB 22-238, property tax. Can you put a little bit more color? I know it was just a whirlwind, a lot of stuff that you covered, but I'm interested in a little bit more detail there, as I suspect many other people are.
Sure. So Colorado does its revaluation of property taxes every 2 years. The assessors do that every 2 years, in most cases, unless a home is sold or something else. There was a business organization that filed a measure with the Secretary of State's office trying to put a cap on the amount of valuation, how much valuation could go up every year for every single property. And a number of state leaders thought that would be really bad policy to have that cap in the Constitution. So as a negotiation, legislative leadership negotiated with this business organization to get them to withdraw that. In return, there would be 2 years of reductions in the residential assessment rate and 1 year of reduction in the commercial assessment rate. And so that bill has passed, the ballot measure was withdrawn. Now, we may see this ongoing every few years, but at least for the next year and maybe 2 years, things have settled down.
Okay, thank you. And I do have one other follow-up. So regarding Senate Bill 22-001, where you're talking about improving streets, a little bit more color there. Are we talking about putting more streetlights up, monitoring cameras? What are we looking at there?
Yes, I think you're correct, Councilman. All kind of those small details, as well as maybe directing thoroughfares so that there's better walkways, that kind of thing. But really, it can be very broad. The legislature purposely allowed the grant program in that bill to remain fairly broad, and it gives a little bit more authority to the Department of Public Safety to kind of, well, to choose what some of those grants could qualify for. But there is also an advisory committee that is made up of law enforcement officers and some other community type members to also kind of look at what some of those parameters should be. So again, the bill was very vague on that, and I imagine a lot more of those details will come forward with the Department of Public Safety, as well as I forget the exact name of the advisory committee, but the advisory committee as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for council members? No? Yeah, Councilmember Brown?
I just want to thank you. It's been several years that we've been doing this, and you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really great job. Thank you so much.
Thank
You
you.
bet. Thank you.
And I'll just echo that. You two are total professionals and represent Northglenn so well down at the Capitol. So thank you for all of your work, and it's been a pleasure to work with you on the Legislative Committee.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It is a pleasure as well.
Yes,
All right,
Thanks.
thank you.
thanks.
All right, we are moving into public invited to be heard. This is an opportunity for public comment on any item not set for public hearing. Statements are limited to 5 minutes per speaker. Statements must be related to city business and limited to matters of community interest. Joanna, is there anyone signed up to speak to council?
Mayor Pro Tem, we do have several individuals signed up. I just want to make sure that they intend to provide public comment or if they would like to wait until the public hearing for the rezoning on Rosanna. So the first person signed up is Janet Green, but I believe she may want to wait for the public hearing on the Rosanna Drive rezoning. Okay, got it. So then, is that true of Natalia Opp as well? The public hearing, okay, great. So we are going to go to Jerry Hunt.
Welcome, Jerry. You'll have 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll try to keep it under that. Basically, I am appearing, I was on the Parks and Rec Advisory Board the prior term, and I've been concerned about the lack of priority for fire mitigation in the unirrigated open spaces. We border the Oscar Arnold nature area, and we are on the east side, and if you look at what happened in Marshall Fire, most of the strong winds, when we have strong winds, are coming from the west. And I was concerned about what kind of mitigation was possible. I organized a group of residents along our street, and we asked Doug Kurgis and Scott McCabe from North Metro Fire to speak to us last Friday. My concern is that there are very different orientations toward fire mitigation between the two. And as I mentioned in the notes I gave you, Parks and Rec would do the 10-foot strip, which would handle normal fire conditions. As Scott McCabe said, it would do absolutely nothing for a high wind situation. And what we are looking for is, we have two very different plans proposed here. One would value habitat and ecology over fire prevention. The residents would have to take care of their own fire prevention, is what it boils down to. The second one, fire department, Scott McCabe suggested that, and he seems to have a lot of experience with wildfires, that in a Marshall Fire type situation, the only way that they could save houses would be if they do a controlled burn on the open spaces each year, which would reduce the dry native grass fire load. So they only have that year's fire load to deal with. And in that situation, he felt that they would have capability of controlling fires. I think that since you've got such a divergence of opinions here, that we really need to have a professional fire assessment and fire mitigation plan for all of the Northglenn open spaces. And I would ask that you consider funding such a plan. Do you have any questions?
Yep, so unfortunately, Jerry, this is public comment and it's not necessarily
Okay.
a two-way dialogue, but I will just point out for council that Jerry's comments have been provided to you, printed out, and so we have those. And if anybody wishes to bring this up during communications, it's something we can discuss at that time.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you very much, Jerry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for putting this together.
Thank you.
Joanna, is there anybody else on the list of individuals who'd like to address council?
The next person is Mark Bromley.
Okay, please come forward, state your name and address, and provide your comments to council.
All right, thank you very much. Well, thanks, City Council, for having me again and stuff like that. Basically, I know I'm the Republican you guys don't like and stuff like that, and I know why. I've heard it all. And anyways, what I came down here for is that I just simply wanted to talk about Robert Condo's appointment to the seat and being extended to 2025, is that, for the whole term? That's what I'm understanding, that he doesn't have to run an election this year. I think he needs to run an election that year if the city council wants to be honorable and have integrity. I think that's required for an elected office, and that's what city council is. It's elected office. It's actually up to the voters to make that decision. And I would like to see if the city council actually has intentions of having him run in an election this year, because he can get on the ballot. Robert Stutz got on the ballot in 2020 in late August, so I know that that's not closed down to putting people on the ballot at the last moment. And I know the city doesn't put anybody on the ballot until basically somewhere in September, October, that time frame. So I was just wondering if the city council is going to choose to be honest, choose to actually have integrity, and choose to honor the voters of the community by actually allowing his seat to go up for election here this year, this August, September, October, and November, where he gets to run for office. After all, I think that is what the city would prefer. I don't think he has a sufficient number of votes to rule out that he's actually supposed to be there, and I don't think bait and switch is a good practice for the city of Northglenn to actually get involved in. Bait and switch is an illegal activity that businesses actually engage in, where they offer you one product and then they switch it out with another product. I don't think our elections should be treated like that. I think that's a violation of the City of Northglenn Charter, and I do believe that's also a violation of state, federal laws about elections and voting and how people are appointed. I sure hope that Northglenn's not turning into Myanmar. That's a terrible place right now. Citizens are being killed left and right because the government just moved in and took over by force. And I hope that that's not what the city of Northglenn's turning into, where basically we no longer have a voice as to who represents us. I do know I have more votes than Councilwoman Goff, so, you know, I should have been on that seat instead, because I do actually have a considerable higher number of votes. So if you're not going to go with the voters and you're just going to do your own thing with the Democrat Party and hate Republicans, I don't know what to say. The only thing is, I can just tell you, I'm a Republican because I chose to go with the party of the lesser of two evils. First of all, they believe in God and they don't kill babies. So, you know, that's why I'm Republican. So anyways, if you guys don't like that, I'm saying that run an election. If he has integrity, Robert Kondo, I have no problem with you. I'm an Asian father too, of an Asian family. My wife's Japanese, my son's Japanese. So I have no problem with that. The only problem I have is that you weren't elected by the elected body of the city of Northglenn in Ward 3. So that's the only problem that I actually have, and I think that an election is required, and that I do believe that honesty and integrity would be established by actually running him for election this year for the city of Northglenn. Unless you Democrats don't believe he has the ability to win an election, then I can understand why you would say that he gets the whole term. But this is a nonpartisan election, so that means that seat's not owned by either party. So trying to use that excuse that a Democrat won that seat, that it belongs to the Democrats, is wrong, because it's a partisan city. So I'd like to see him run for office this year, and that's basically all I have to say. Thank you very much for having me. And any questions, concerns?
Thank you, Mr. Bromley.
All right, have a good day.
Joanna, is there anybody else signed up to speak?
There is not. I believe the other folks would like to speak during the public hearing on the Rosanna Drive rezoning.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that didn't have the opportunity to sign up that would like to speak to council? Everybody run forward for the mic. No? Okay. All right, thank you. All right, we're going to move into communications, starting with Ward 1. Councilmember Witkovich.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I do have a few updates to run through real quick. I did miss the last city council meeting, so I did want to mention that I attended the Vail board meeting on May 18th. And one thing I'd like to get consensus from council, I've been asked to bring forward the idea of amending our ordinance for Vail. We have one member who has been on the board since 1999. She recently bought a new home that's not going to be in Northglenn anymore. The only other person on our board who has been on longer is, of course, Joyce, who's been there since 1992. But the request is that we amend the ordinance to allow for non-Northglenn residents to serve on the board, which I think is a great idea. We don't have people necessarily lining up to join the Vail board, and ultimately it comes down to Vail and then city council to appoint members. So I would just like to get everybody's maybe a yay or a nay, if that's something that we could have Heather set up for us.
Any thoughts, opinions, council? Questions? Councilmember
I
Brown?
just need a little bit more time. I'm willing to vote on it next time, but I haven't researched the Vail board enough to be able to make a determination whether, I imagine it's Leslie you're talking about?
Yeah, of course.
Can
Sorry.
stay on the board or not, or whether that should be restricted to Northglenn residents. It's always been restricted to Northglenn residents in the past, and I'm honestly not sure why we had a restriction for them, but they're not really part of Northglenn per se, aren't they, like Nura? No.
Unlike NURA, which is set by state law, the Vail Board is actually a creature of Northglenn. So Northglenn has the ability to establish the membership as it determines appropriate.
And if council, sorry,
Go ahead,
Councilmember
go ahead.
Brand, I just thought I'd interject. If council direction is to bring this item forward, I believe what I'm hearing the request to be is that staff would do the research and present the options to council. So we would do the research in terms of here's why it is what it is today. If you want to entertain the consideration to make the change, here's what would be involved in that change. And so this would be study sessioned prior to coming to council for any type of formal action.
I would definitely be in favor of that if staff has the bandwidth to do all the research for us, you know? Because in my mind, I just don't know why we originally had it set for Northglenn residents. And I know it's hard to get people to serve on the board, but changing for one person, you know what I mean? That's kind of difficult. I know that Leslie has a long-standing history of community service, and she does a great job. She's also on NURA. But I personally would like some more information, because changing something just for one person just doesn't seem right to me.
Okay. How do folks feel about a quick thumbs up or thumbs down on this coming back to a study session and us having a larger discussion? Thumbs up, study session, we're good?
Study session,
Okay,
yes.
great.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I think that's what the board They just wanted us to look into it and consider it. And as you mentioned, Leslie is on NERA. I believe she's also in the Northglenn Foundation, and she'll
Yeah.
continue doing those things when she moves out of Northglenn. So I know she really wants to continue with Vail, and so hence the request.
She just has to, on NERA, just so you know, she won't be able to be a voting member, right, unless she's,
Actually, NERA, it is not required that you be
Right.
a resident of Northglenn.
I thought they had to be commissioners. Okay, or not, like Ron is.
There is no residency requirement for a
Okay.
NERA member.
Thank you.
Councilmember Witkovich, do you have a timing consideration? Do you know when she's planning on moving out of the city?
That's a good question. I could confirm it. I believe it's going to be in September or October.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank
But,
you.
I can double check with Leslie.
Okay, thanks.
And then just one more update from Vail. We did decide as a board not to fund any grants in the year 2023. Our fund balance is just not good enough to be able to support all the organizations who apply, so we will not be offering those grants in 2023. Couple more things. Back on June 2nd, Councilmember Walker and I attended the Groove Grub and Local Gov event in Larson Park. I think it was a huge success. Big thank you to staff for making it all happen. We got a lot of great conversations with residents, and we enjoyed that. On June 6th, I attended the Rocky Flat Stewardship Council. It was virtual. Hopefully, our next one will be able to be in person. But just a couple highlights from the meeting. We heard the results of the 2021 financial audit. There were no problems found, and the Stewardship Council was found to be in compliance with all applicable laws and regulations, which is great to know. We also heard our annual meeting update from the Department of Energy. Nothing to report. And we also had a meeting from CDPHE, which included an overview of their role in regulating site activities out there at the Rocky Flats area. That's all on Rocky Flats. On June 10th, I attended the 5-Star Education Foundation's 5-Star Classic. It's out at Topgolf. Second year they've done it, and the second year that I've attended, and it was much better organized than it was last year, and it was a lot of fun. And they really do appreciate our support here in Northglenn. I also attended 2 interviews with Barry Dunn recently in the last week, one for CCPP and one for SEPTED, and I'm looking forward to the results of both of those. That's all I've got.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Walker.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Just to echo Miss Ashley's statements, Group Grub and Local Gov was great. I want to thank Miss Diana and her staff for a wonderful choice of vendors, and the band was amazing. We got to meet our great new park ranger who helps with our 27 parks. And I want to thank the other various committees that came out and support us and talked with our residents. We got a lot of great feedback. At least I got a couple pages full of notes. Some of them did also bring up the concerns of fire mitigation in places like Fox Run too, so I look forward to having that conversation for what we're going to do. A lot of the other comments also focused on safety and speeding in our streets, and so if some of you concerned residents want to reach out to me, I have my own radar gun, and you can use in your neighborhood to see if we can help make the streets a little bit safer. So please reach out to me. My contact information is on the website, and I look forward to hearing from you. And that is all.
All right. Councilmember Jaramillo.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I had my first meeting with Adams County Government Transportation Committee, and that was very eye-opening on all of the all of the issues happening around Adams County, which also includes part of Aurora. We weren't able to vote on something because there weren't enough people in attendance for the Zoom meeting. So a lot of topics all over the region, and so that was very eye-opening. Also, that was June 8th, and also right after that, I serve on Northglenn Arts and Humanities Foundation Board of Directors, and we had, it's the Guerrilla Fanfare Brass Band. We had them at the festival lawns right behind us, so that was great, and I recommend you all to come out next Wednesday for the Hot Lunch Band. I've seen them before, they've been here in the past. It's gonna be great, so come out and check that out. I also attended the 5-Star Schools Adams 12 Education Foundation fundraiser. It was awesome. I won a raffle, so I've never really won this. So that was exciting. That was the highlight of Topgolf was fun too. It was great meeting other people, but it was it was mostly people in the private sector that were there, that were helped the funding. So I was only able to really meet our colleagues from Broomfield. So I wish there was more elected officials there showing support. So I think that was that. So it was, yeah. It was my first time there, but yeah, it was awesome. And I also attended Adams 12 5-star school, so I appreciate them, continuing to fund the future.
All
That's all I
right.
got.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Brown.
Hi. I'm making notes because I really have been really busy.
Good.
I know. Even though the first 2 days of my new job kicked my butt, I did make it to the NERA meeting. It's really hard. I was unemployed for 3 months this first time in 464 days during COVID. It's really hard to set your alarm for 6 o'clock in the morning, to be out the door by 7 when you've worked from home for 10 years. And I don't like 6 o'clock in the morning. So it really did kick my butt. But I did make it to NERA. And we had a great Civic Center presentation by Brooke and Jay. And I would say that most of the comments that came from the NERA board were the same comments that came from us, But Jay had a lot more vegetation in his slides, and it really looked nice. I was pleased. We actually did 3 big grants, which are business improvement grants. We did Forma Furniture, which is going to open in the old Ulta business, and we gave them $12,500 for signs. They're going to put one in the front and one in the back. J&W Massage, we gave them a grant for $12,500, I believe, for signs. That may be an overstatement. I apologize. We did Washington Point, where they are going to be repaving a section over by the vape, but in the parking lot part. So we're helping them out with that. And then, I'm going to say this wrong, and Jay can help me. In Tecate Mexican food, we have a new Mexican restaurant moving into town. So we're able to help them with their signs. I also met with Barry Dunn on the 2 meetings, and I really did enjoy them. I think that for the safety, in our parks, that's going to be a great outcome and great discussion item. The other thing that I'm doing on my own is that I have had many residents reach out to me directly regarding bullying and some racial issues that are happening in some of our schools. So I met with Chris Kadowski, and we went over what Adams 12's position is going to be moving into the next school year and how they're going to handle the situation, because it really has gotten out of hand. I don't know if any of you have children there, but it really has gotten out of hand. So I have a commitment from Mr. Gadowski that we will meet again before the school year starts. They are polling their numbers right now to come up with a plan. My suggestion is that we do 3 diversity trainings for children, and that they're brought down to their level, not obviously at the diversity training that we've all attended, but brought down to the children's level. And obviously, high school would be different from middle school. Middle school would be different from elementary school. And my suggestion to them was that I would like to see that happen 3 times a year, at the beginning of the school year, the middle of the school year, and before they go home for the summer, so that they can keep those great thoughts going and not let outside elements come into it. So he really did seem to be receptive to that, and invited me to help, which I would gladly do that. Our Groove, Grub, and Local Gov is on the 23rd. I believe it's at Wyco. It's at Wyco. The thing is that Jay and I will not be able to attend because we're going to be at the CML conference. So if you do go, we will have staff there to answer any questions that we have. And then we will catch up with you at our next ward meeting. We hadn't planned to be gone for this because I always like to go to all these things. But in this particular case, I believe there was a miscommunication and we went ahead with it. That's all I have, Madam Mayor Pro Tem.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Councilmember Kondo.
So I'm going to be brief in my remarks, but obviously I've been in this position now for about a month. And I'll tell you that the day after I was installed as the interim council member, reading the report from the 17th Judicial District really impressed upon me that some of the things that we do here are life and death. And I think that really inspired me to sign up for a ride-along, which I did on Memorial Day weekend. So I want to thank Chief May, who's in the audience here, as I wanted to get an appreciation about the safety, public safety issues facing all of us. And I'm sure you all are acutely aware as you read the Northglenn connection of the increase in crime. The other thing I think is really important is that in life, you know, you have to kind of make a decision along multiple dimensions. It could be, you know, left versus right, or it could be 3 dimensions. And to make those well-informed, educated decisions, you have to be smart about understanding how city government runs. So in that month, I've actually met with all the council members here on the days, even those not present. I've met with the outgoing council member, as well as all the directors on the city manager's staff. And my goal is to establish a constructive working relationship so that I can understand the issues. You'll see that during meetings, I actually have all the packet materials. This is all the material that I read over the weekend to make sure that I'm prepared. But there are a few other things that I've done that I want to make sure that you as residents understand so that you have the confidence that I am working and doing my level best here to best represent you all in your interest. And that is, besides the ride-along, I've been to the police commissioning ceremony. Again, I think that's really important to honor our peace officers who run to the danger. I've had experience doing that as a naval officer responding to the Fukushima nuclear disaster. I hope that experience gives me some appreciation of being able to address some concerns about fire. And I really appreciate the gentleman who spoke earlier about that. And I really do take that seriously. Myself, along with Councilmember Yaramillo, did a plant tour of our water treatment and sewage facilities. And I'll tell you, I think all of you as residents get the opportunity to tour that. You don't really get appreciation of how much capital investment is involved in that. And I'll just give you an example. The clarifier, it's this big thing that has a boom. It's about 100 feet in diameter. You think it's as shallow as a kiddie pool. And that thing is actually deep. It's 30 feet deep. It's concrete, about 2-foot diameter sort of construct. And so when we talk about capital improvements that are on the order of millions of dollars, I get it. I understand that. And I hope that I can bring the discipline of where I've worked in private industry. You know, obviously publicly traded companies, we try to produce return on investment and earnings for shareholders. My goal here is to work for the city, not to just give you a return on investment, but rather to make sure that the services, whether it's water or police protection, we're doing it at the most economically viable sort of manner of how we approach doing things. So again, I do want to thank you for your trust on the council as you all decided that I would be satisfactory and sufficient in fulfilling the remaining period in Councilmember Malika's term. One last thing, you know, certainly having that experience in dealing with emergencies, I will be the liaison for the North Metro Fire District. So again, I will make sure that I am intentful in talking about the issues of fire mitigation. So thank you very much.
All right. Councilmember Goff. Dr. Goff, how are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I first of all want to express my regrets at not being there in person. I was recently exposed to COVID and I'm waiting the results of a test. I have experienced no symptoms. I'm hoping to be, you know, I've got a positive outlook on it. So we'll just have to see what happens there. So in light of that, I really did want to give a thank you to Deja Moore as the representative for the Diversity Board who came in person to receive the proclamations. And I just wanted to say that I'm really very proud of all the work that the Diversity Board has done. I'm really proud of Northglenn as a city to honor make Juneteenth an official holiday and, for the Pride Proclamation. I know I've had a couple of residents express a little disappointment that Northglenn is not hosting a Pride event this year, but Northglenn will have a table at the Adams County Pride Festival, which will be on Saturday, June 18th, out at the Adams County Fairgrounds. So I encourage anyone who enjoyed our Pride Fest last year to come on out there and take a look at what's going on there. I'm sure it'll be a much bigger event than what we had, which, pros and cons with that. But anyway, I wanted to share that. Also on June 25th, Ward 3 is having a ward meeting. It will be in one of the community rooms in our new rec center, and Ward 3 residents should have gotten their postcard invitation by now. So I look forward to attending that with Councilmember Kondo, and we hope to see a lot of people there. Let's see. The other thing that I did last week, or this past week on June 9th, is I did attend the CC4CA retreat, and that's the Colorado Communities for Climate Action, which certainly supports a lot of our sustainability goals. I'm there to represent Northglenn. And I also wanted to say that I'm very humbled and also, I guess, kind of proud, but I was selected to be vice chair of that coalition. And so I'll be working on those kind of activities for the CC4CA in the coming year. Thank you. And let's see, I did attend the 2 Barry Dunn meetings, I guess you would say. So I'm looking forward to getting information from the SEPTED study, and that I can't remember what the acronym exactly stands for, but that's a study to see the environment and how we can use that to make things like our EV Rains Park safer. So when we get results from that, we'll certainly be sharing that out with our community. And I actually think that's probably about it. So I will just say thank you at that point for everyone who came tonight and both as accepting proclamations and to speak to us. We really, really appreciate our residents taking the time and effort to come in and talk to us. So that's it for me. Thank you.
All right, we're going to hope that test is negative for you, Councilmember Goff. All right, Councilmember Lukman-Hiromasa. Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Hard for me to say. I apologize. I'm still pretty hoarse, so if anyone has issues hearing me with the mask on, I will try my best to project a little bit more than I normally do. There were a couple of things. I attended my very first business walkthrough with the Business Retention and Expansion Committee, and we visited several businesses in the Washington Point shopping area, and there were a lot of big concerns. I have to send out kudos to Debbie and Shannon Fields and everyone in the Economic Development office, because they are amazing. They know everyone. They know who the managers are, who the owners are in all of those businesses. And so when we walked in, it was immediate good conversation. One of the biggest things, I guess the common threads that I heard from businesses in the area are the issues with homelessness, drugs, and then there were parking lot issues, which I believe is kind of tied into what you just said was approved in grants and improvements in that. But some of the things that I've heard before from residents also are that they can't find shopping carts in that Safeway. And that's a big issue. And I went there, and sure enough, there were probably only about 6 carts in this entire shopping center. And the issue is that they're taken away and they don't come back. We talked about several things, like have they looked into the locking carts? And apparently they have, but because of supply chain issues, they're not able to get the parts that they need to create that kind of a system that would keep the shopping carts in there. We did talk about some of the things they can do, call the non-emergency numbers. Jessica Hulse with the crisis response unit and that whole team as well. They were, it was enforced that they can call them if they have any issues. But there's definitely, I think, some opportunity to look at following along the lines of SEPTED, some areas that can be created and made a little safer. Some of the areas in front of the ARC, for example, have like these old shopping cart rails that
are used for people maybe to hide and, do things that are possibly something that they couldn't get away with if those weren't there. So I know Debbie and her team are on it. We talked about making sure that council members in those wards, in those areas are informed of all of that. So she'll be reaching out to, I know that's your ward, in that area, so that I'm sure you're all aware of that, but just in case, just know that she'll be reaching out as well. So that was very interesting. ARC had the same problems in most of those businesses in the area, but they were also very accommodating and willing to work with the city and the folks there in terms of resolving some of those issues. And then, let's see, I did attend the SEPTED interview today, the first of the 2 interviews, and I'm looking forward to those results, as my colleagues have mentioned. Important for us to improve the safety in the areas of EB ratings, the Civic Center campus, and Croak Reservoir. So looking forward to see what comes out of that. And then I wanted to bring forth a request to council. Sorry, excuse me, I'm going to cough. During the last big snowstorm that we had a few weeks ago, I lost power and found out that there were probably close to 600, I believe, and don't quote me on the number, residents in Ward 4, in and around Ward 4, who lost power. And it was quickly evident that none of the council members were even aware that so many of folks in our city were without power when it was cold, and so forth. And even me speaking with other council members, I lost power for 2 days, from Friday to Sunday. So things like that, I mentioned to city manager that it got me thinking. I know other cities around here are doing emergency preparedness study sessions. So we all know what we should do, but having something like that, I think, would be a big benefit to our residents in terms of knowing, for various emergencies, what the city's plan is, and that includes fires. So maybe that part of fire mitigation can be a part of that discussion. But it would include, partners such as Excel, our PD, maybe North Metro Fire Department, outlining what the city's plan is for various disasters. Like, for example, with power being out, what if there were seniors that would have needed help? Luckily, it was cold. It was very cold, but not cold enough that it could have been. Contaminated water, things like tornadoes, fires, and so forth. So that is an ask, if you all would be willing to have a discussion on what our city's plan is and what the different parts are in making sure we and our residents are safe. Is that something?
Motion to add that as a future discussion.
Would that be a study session?
A study session.
Yeah.
As a study session.
Okay, so I'm hearing a request for a study session to talk about emergency preparedness and how we interact with the community. I think that's incredibly smart request, and so just a quick thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay, Heather, you should have the direction you need.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I have one other ask, and it's definitely a little bit, it might require a little bit of thinking, but for July 25th, we have a discussion scheduled for gun policies and gun control issues. And I am out of town on that day, and it's a discussion that I've heard from my residents that they are concerned on both sides from and want to give their input. And so I don't know if it's a possibility to have that at a different day. That is my request. I know that's a big request because of scheduling. So I'm asking my colleagues if it's okay for city manager to look at some potential alternate dates.
I'll be out of town that
You'll be
week
out of
too,
town
so
as well?
I want to be here.
Are you good with that, Heather? You think you can make it work at another date?
Sorry.
Absolutely. No, we can move it. If council can indulge me for a minute, the next available meeting would be August 8th. Is that a good date? Because certainly with the intent of addressing one date, I don't want to create an issue with another date. So there's August 8th and then August 22nd.
Heather, I wonder if we can shift things to potentially have the conversation before the 25th? Is that a
Do
possibility?
you want to talk about having it sooner? Corey and I just had this conversation
you?
today, yeah, so I'll let him elaborate.
That's great. I think that's a great question. So Councilmember Brown just asked if this would fall as a discussion item during a council meeting or if it would be scheduled as a study session item.
So I scheduled it as a discussion item in order to get it on sooner in late July than August. But Corey and I did talk about a consideration with knowing that you could ask the question, which you are tonight, about having it sooner. So I'll let him elaborate.
So you certainly could have it sooner. The Boulder County communities all in unison considered this at the last meeting. I guess my suggestion is to see what the reaction is from external forces because it might give you additional information in terms of potential litigation that's raised as a result of the other communities. I know that, for example, Broomfield is a little late, is considering this a little later, I believe, in the early fall. We can bring it sooner if you'd like, but it might have additional information to see what happens as a result of the ordinances that were passed last week.
Okay. What do you all think? Do you have a preference?
Motion to move to August study session.
August, sounds good for everyone?
August sounds good.
Okay, does that work?
I'm out for that 23rd, so if we could possibly move it into the last 2 weeks in August, I think I'm on vacation.
Okay, so does August 8th work
August 8th?
as of now?
That works? Yes. And then,
Councilmember Walker?
and he has a wild social life.
He sure does.
Study session or discussion item?
Studies.
That's a regular meeting, so that would be a discussion item.
And that's a good place.
Otherwise, we'd have to wait until, September, based on volume of meeting schedules.
And
Lots of questions.
we'll try to put together a fairly user-friendly memo. There's basically 7 or 8 different measures that are separately identified, and we can kind of put it into manageable chunks so we can go through them pretty quickly.
Okay, great. Well, I think I've seen thumbs up from almost everyone that August 8th works.
Great, thank you.
Of course. All right, Councilmember Beckman.
I have.
Okay, excellent. Yep. All right. So I'll jump in here. The first item that I wanted to start with is a follow-up on one of the things that we heard during the public comment. So you all received this overview of fire mitigation in Northglenn open spaces that was presented by Jerry Hunt. And you all, I hope you heard Jerry when you said that he previously served for quite some time on the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. And actually, that's where I met Jerry when I was first appointed to that committee during my first term on council. I do think that given the sort of diversity of perspectives with North Metro Fire versus the city, that it would be worth having a conversation as a council if you all are open to it, scheduling a study session to really talk about what our fire mitigation planning is, not only for open spaces and parks, but also how do we involve our residents in making sure that their own properties are appropriately mitigated. Because I think unfortunately the reality is that what happened in Boulder County could very easily happen in our own backyards. The other piece of the conversation that I just want to highlight for folks, I think that you may have received an email from an individual in Ward 4 requesting us to have a conversation about fire pits. And I think that that conversation could very easily be included in the fire mitigation conversation as well. So just want to get y'all's thought. Are you okay to have a study session and talk about fire mitigation planning?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we've got consensus to do that.
I'm voting for you.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you for that. I recognize, Heather, that we're adding a lot onto the calendar. So thank you for your flexibility on that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Next up, keeping with the theme of fire, I wanted to make sure that you all saw the invite for the Fire Station 62 reopening and open house tomorrow, June 14th. I believe it starts at 5 p.m. So feel free to swing by. I think the event's from 5 to 6 p.m. There'll be some opening remarks and then a chance to take a look at their newly renovated space. So I hope y'all can come out. For folks that are maybe listening into the meeting tonight, that fire station is located at approximately Huron and just off of 104th. Let's see, the last two items, really quickly, I'm looking forward to the volunteer appreciation dinner that's coming up on Wednesday. It's going to be a really awesome opportunity to celebrate all of the incredible residents who give so freely of their time and their talent to the city. So I'm looking forward to getting to celebrate with folks. We'll be having some dinner over in E.B. Rains Park. Hopefully the weather will cooperate and not be crazy hot, but we will see. And then the last thing is I just really wanted to uplift the position that Catherine was just appointed to with CC4CA as the vice chair of the organization. That is a huge deal because as CC4CA, Colorado Communities for Climate Action, does represent, I think they're getting close to 28, 30 different communities across the state. And having Northglenn at the table and in a leadership position is just a really incredible opportunity to represent our city and our residents. And I believe, Catherine, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the vice chair in the second year often moves up to be the chair of the organization.
That is correct, and we are also approaching 40 members.
Which is extraordinary. So just wanted to make sure that I highlighted what a big deal that was for everybody. And thank you, Catherine, for taking that on. All right, I believe Councilmember Brown, you had one other item you wanted to highlight?
Just one.
Okay.
I forgot to mention that I did enjoy my lunch with Councilmember Kondo. And I am thoroughly impressed from another council person's standpoint at the degree that you're digging into things that you've done M&O already, or you haven't done M&O, you did the water stations and you've met with all of us. And I really do appreciate that. It gave us a good chance to get to know you and you got a good chance to get to know us. And I want to uplift you just a minute by letting you know that you were elected to this seat because you were the best candidate for the seat. We on council are nonpartisan. I can't even tell you, honestly, what political, I have a guess about him, but I can't tell you what political party
No, Nick.
anybody else is involved in. When we are elected to city council, our job is to be nonpartisan and represent all the residents here in Northglenn, and I think we do a really good job of it. We've never broken down terms. I don't even think we are a Democratic council, but I won't go into that. We're only Democratic in the point that we vote on things and we make issues, you know. We vote on the issues and the majority wins. That's about as far as we get. So I wanted to thank you for my lunch and let you know that you were elected by your peers because you were the best candidate for the position.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you, Councilmember Brown. I wholeheartedly agree.
Thank
All
you, Mayor Pro
right.
Tem.
Let's see. Next up, let's change it up a little bit. City Clerk, Joanna, how's it going?
It's going well. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Wolford.
Of course.
Just
Anything
wanted
to
to-
report?
I do
Okay.
quickly mention that Adams County is currently conducting a primary election. So voted ballots are due back by 7 p.m. on Tuesday, June 28th. For voter convenience, there's a 24-hour ballot box that's located in the south parking lot here at City Hall. And if you hop online at adamsvotes.com, there are many other drop-off boxes located throughout the county. And then I wanted to mention that in addition, voter service and polling centers will be open starting on Monday, June 20th for voters if you need assistance in person. And again, you can find more information online. The county's phone number is 720-523-6500 if you would like to give them a phone call as well. And that is all I have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. City Manager Geyer.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. I sent several emails to all of you today, catching up on, cleaning up my inbox. One item of particular attention that I wanted to highlight is that I did hear back from a representative CDPHE regarding the Sunny Slope Estates assisted living facility, and that facility has been closed, as you know, as of late May. The state did assist all of those residents in finding a new residence. So I just wanted to provide that information to council because I know there was quite a bit of discussion and commenting happening on various social media channels. And so I've been assured by CDPHE that that was their role to facilitate finding those residents new homes, and that the facility is closed, and that There's certain information that's public and then certain information that's not public. So what was publicly shared with me is what you have in your inbox in terms of the business could apply for a new license with the state, but their existing license was revoked through the enforcement process that CDPHE has. So just wanted to share that. Unfortunately, had hoped to have Bubble Fest numbers for you tonight. I heard it was a great turnout, but I don't have specific numbers for you in terms of attendance. So we'll share that via email with you in the week ahead. Thanks.
All right, thank you. City Attorney.
Good evening, Madam
Hoffman.
Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. I do not have anything to report tonight.
All right, well, that was easy. Okay, all right, we're going to move into our financial report, the April 2022 update. Jason Loveland, Director of Finance, will present this item to council.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. As mentioned, this is the April 22 interim financial report. So we're a third of the way through the year, so keep that in mind as we're looking at different variance analysis throughout the report. No presentation tonight. We do that on a quarterly basis, so you'll want to flip through the packet item. So first, I'll start off with an update on sales and use tax. Through April, which is through March collections, those are up 11.5% over the previous year. Specific areas of interest on some of our larger tax items. Auto use tax is up 2%. We've had significant growth in auto use tax the last couple of years, so to see a positive number of 2% is still fantastic considering the year-over-year trends that we've seen in 2020 and 2021. Nationally, we're expecting to see some slide off in auto sales due to just the lack of supply. Sales tax itself is up just under 13%, and food tax is down 1.1%. I will call that flat through just a few months of the year. And then you'll note we've identified our marijuana tax is down 22%. And that is actually two of our businesses did not remit during the period. So we're getting those collected and should see a more balanced number in the marijuana tax as we move forward. So that's a summary on page 1. I'll start off with the general fund. Total budget in that fund is $32 million, and expenditures are budgeted at $44 million. So going back to the conversation from our auditor of what the reserve balance is as a percentage, at the end of 2021, yes, it was significant. Largely in part of planning that we took part of in 2015 for our new civic campus. Part of that was to build up reserves to fund the city hall that we have planned. So you'll notice on page 3, when we get there, a significant other financing line item in the budget, which calls for an additional $3 million more than our usual funding for roads, and then $8 million to fund this project. So we'll see a decline in the fund balance from about 80% down to about 47% by the end of this year. So on the revenue side in the general fund, total taxes are up just under 14%. Again, we're seeing the benefits of one-time revenue from development at Carl's Farm through building material use tax. Other revenues that are significant on this, charges for services, you'll see that's mainly the recreation center. So if we think about the timing of early 2021 versus today, plus a new facility being open, those are up at 100% through the period. In the collection rate column, one of the orange highlighted columns, you'll see that the collection rate's at 28%. That's typical, so we had budgeted to have increase in revenue. So we're on track there. Overall total general fund revenue of $9 million, which is up $1.8 million over the prior year. And again, at a collection rate of 28%, which is consistent with the timing of how our cash flows occur on the revenue side. In the general fund expenditures, Total expenditures of $9.6 million. That's a spending rate of 22%, which is a little slow, honestly, in comparison to what we normally see. We'll expect that to pick up through the summer and fall and winter. Total general fund expenditures are up 13%. However, that's in alignment with what we had planned and budgeted for the year. Any questions within the general fund specifically? Otherwise, I'll skip ahead to the other funds. Okay. So on the water fund side, total revenues are at $3.9 million, which is up $1.4 million from the prior year. $800,000 of that is accounted for from tap fees with Carl's Farm Development, and then another $200,000 from building material use tax. So a lot of one-time revenues showing up in the water fund. But again, the collection rate is at 21.5%, which is comparable to our normal standard of about 20%. In that, expenditures are up about 38%. That's specific to the capital outlay, capital expenditures, and then capital projects influence that. On our operating expenditures, those are up 9%, and in line at 33% of the total spend rate for the year. Water consumption through April was up 3%, so that's driving a little bit of the increase that we see in the blue box at the bottom on water usage, showing that revenue up 7%. And then in the wastewater fund, total revenues of just under $1.7 million and expenditures of $3.3 million. That's significant to the capital outlay for the Force Main and Lift Station project. Those total expenditures are at $2.5 million in the capital. Otherwise, on the operating side, we're a level playing field when we compare to last year. Jumping ahead to the stormwater fund, small revenues at this point of the year, $165,000, and expenditures of $36,000. Again, we'll see an increase in stormwater charges. That shows we're up 36%, again, to Carl's Farm and those development fees associated with that project. And then the last fund that we'll touch on is sanitation. Revenues are flat, no new fee increases or more people participating within the community, so we'll expect to see those flat, and they are. And then total expenditures of $700,000 in alignment at 29% of the spending rate for the year. More detail on all of the capital projects falls on page 17 through 22. We won't go through those details unless you have questions, but that information is provided at the back of the documentation. And I think, unless there's other questions, I will stop there since we're mixing 2021 audit and 2022 actuals within the same meeting. It gets a little bit confusing of what numbers we're talking about and when.
All right, we've got a question for you from Councilmember Kondo.
Great.
Yeah, it's not as much as a question, I think, as a statement. And in part, I see a lot of residents here, so I just want to share a perspective. So when Jay and I toured the treatment plant in the winter months basically produces about 2 million gallons per day of fresh water. And then in the summertime, it actually ramps up to about 7 to 8 million gallons per day, which is a lot. The other thing that's really impressive, and I hope you all get a chance to go there, is that the motive force for moving the water all the way from Berthoud and Loveland Pass is all by gravity. There's, I think, only 1 or 2 electrical pumps in our freshwater treatment system, which is pretty impressive. So if you think we're a green city, think back to 1980 when that plant was first brought online, and somebody had the vision to think about using gravity, which is brilliant. Unfortunately, the sewage plant, which is very memorable from an olfactory perspective, actually consumes quite a bit of power, electrical power, because you've got to have all these pumps and filters and UV light. So I mentioned earlier about doing diligence and understanding how the city runs. I hope that just sharing these little tidbits with you gives you some sense of understanding that when we sit up here and we think about some of the expenses, in fact, I think one of them has to do with water tonight, having that sort of perspective is extremely valuable. So, and then I'd encourage you to try and figure out how to conserve your water use in the summertime. 8 million is a lot of water. So, but thank you again, Corey. I'm sorry, Jason, for the report. I'll get with you offline with my separate questions.
Councilmember Brown?
Mine is actually more of a statement too. I love the fact that the marketplace sales tax has gone up so much in 2022. Again, I think the commitment from not only NURA and economic development and the owners of that particular marketplace shows that we are really making some great progressive moves there. I personally hadn't gone over there in a long time, and I was surprised at everything that was open that I hadn't been into yet. But I just wanted to comment on that. It looks like it's right on a path to keep going, which is great. And again, I just want to congratulate you and your team on the audit results for last year. Another fantastic job. I can always count on you. When I'm looking at the sales taxes, though, outside of the marketplace, I'm seeing some declines. Do you think that that's residential? I'm not residential, I'm sorry. Do you think that that's related to where they're actually located? And are the two marijuana businesses, you don't have to tell me which two they are, but they are directly related to, yes? Okay.
Yes, those are influencing those numbers.
And we're in the process of making sure that that happens?
Correct.
You are so good to me. Okay. Thank you very much. It looks great this month. I don't have a whole lot of questions. You covered everything.
Great. All right.
All right, I don't see any other questions.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Jason. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent
Second.
agenda.
All right, please open the vote.
The vote is open. Councilmember Goff, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. I will close that vote, and the consent agenda passes unanimously.
All right, we're going to move into public hearings. CB 1984. Joanna, will you read the title?
A bill for a special ordinance rezoning from mixed neighborhood MN to multifamily limited RM1, certain real property with an address of 1501 Rosanna Drive, City of Northglenn, County of Adams, State of Colorado, and amending the zoning map of the City of Northglenn.
Motion to approve. We're going into.